the US, if you become disabled, you are completely shut out of society and you're basically just excluded from being in the world because things are so inaccessible.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Katie, and for those of you who don't know me, I used to weigh 360 pounds, and I've lost 180 pounds and kept it off for years now. And on this channel, we will discuss weight loss, weight maintenance, nonsense I see online about body positivity and fat acceptance, my experiences with all of that, and well, anything else I feel like talking about. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, and let's get into today's video. So today I have a TikTok from our friend to the channel, as she goes by on TikTok, More Than Tracy T. And she's got some thoughts on skincare and how that apparently relates to weight. So I figure we'll go ahead and watch this together and I'll give you my reactions along the way.
Why are the skincare people so, absolutely rad?
It's for the exact same reasons people are so weird about fat people, which basically amount to healthism, ableism, neoliberalism, and the just world fallacy. Let me explain.
Okay, wow, that is a lot that she is going to try to tie together. So let's go ahead and see what she has to say.
Both the way that skincare is talked about and the way that weight is talked about is as a matter of personal responsibility that has health consequences that can, potentially shorten your life or bring terrible conditions upon you. And the idea in both of these areas is that you deserve those conditions if you didn't do the necessary self-management work to avoid them.
Wow, okay, so she just said a mouthful there. First off, she's talking about personal responsibility when it comes to skincare and managing your weight. And then she says that apparently if you aren't good at those things that you, quote, deserve all of the things that come along with that. So let's go ahead and break that down. And just for a little bit of background, I have had melanoma removed. It was several years ago and I had a mole that was looking very strange. So I did go ahead and make an appointment with a dermatologist, and well, the closest dermatologist I could find was an hour and a half away. But thankfully I did keep that appointment and I made it up there, and they were able to remove it before it had spread into anything bad. So thankfully it was melanoma in situ, which is basically the mildest form of melanoma you can get. So I caught it as early as humanly possible, basically. And thankfully I have been clear ever since. But I will say, after getting the call that I did have melanoma, I did kick my own ass for all of the times that people had warned me to wear sunscreen when I was a kid, and I just ignored them. All of the times that I allowed myself to get sunburned, whether I was a kid, whether I was a teenager, whether I was an adult, I knew better all of those times. And I ignored all of the advice that I was given, and now I kick my own ass for not following that advice, because that was a very terrifying thing to hear. And again, I am incredibly fortunate and grateful that it was caught as early as it was. But it definitely was a big wake-up call that this is something that I can't mess around with. And it's not something that I'm ever going to mess around with when it comes to my children. So I know I've mentioned before that I do have a pool, and I spend a good portion of the summer out in the pool with my kids. But I definitely am very diligent that every single time we go outside, we're wearing at a bare minimum SPF 70. And I'm going to reapply it multiple times if I need to. And I'm going to make sure throughout the day that we're not getting roasted while we're out there. Because yeah, I don't want my kids to get sunburned and go through the same thing that I did. Because I understand that this was a consequence of my action. By me ignoring the advice of wearing sunscreen, that eventually led to enough damage that it caused melanoma. So yes, I am very aware of the effects of not taking skincare seriously. That being said, did I deserve it? I mean, no, not really in any particular fashion. I didn't deserve it, but I did have consequences from my actions. And in this case, it was the inaction, the non-wearing of the sunscreen, the staying out all day at an amusement park without sunscreen or any sun protection whatsoever. And then, driving home with blisters that by the time I made it home had already popped. I mean, we're talking that level of sunburn that through my inaction, I allowed to happen to myself numerous times. So I won't say that I deserved it, but what I can tell you is absolutely, my actions caused that consequence. And I do kick my own ass all the time that I didn't listen to people about wearing sunscreen or protecting myself from the sun more. But at the end of the day, I do also consider myself very lucky, again, that it was caught as early as it was and I haven't had any further issues. And then when we're talking about the health consequences when it comes to weight, I've definitely mentioned numerous times on here that at 360 pounds, well, I was out of breath going to get the mail, couldn't really fit behind the steering wheel of my own car anymore without discomfort. I couldn't tie my own shoes any longer. And well, there were just a lot of things that were really difficult or impossible for me to do at 360 pounds. So this morning, I was talking with my daughter, and I was letting her know that I was going to be filming later in the day. And she asked me what types of videos I make. And she very much wanted to know exactly what kind of videos I make. So I was explaining to her all of the fun things that we go and do together. All of the times that I take them to the zoo and we go running through the obstacle course and I go down the slide with them and we go across the rope bridge or through the tunnel, or I just chase them all over because it's really fun. Riding the carousel, riding the train with them, taking them to parks and playgrounds and running all over. All the times that we just go for walks and we go and explore and we check out nature and we see the blue herons and we see the ducks and so many other things. And I know at 360 pounds, I couldn't have done any of those things. That wasn't even a health consequence. That's just a quality of life consequence in so many ways. And on top of that, I did have health consequences. I was pre-diabetic. I had symptomatic PCOS. I had given myself obesity-induced asthma. I had hypertension that was not controlled. I had so many things that were coming down the pike. So much joint pain, so much knee pain, that all of those things combined made it very difficult or nearly impossible for me to do so many tasks in my day-to-day life, let alone anything else I may have ever wanted to do. There's no shot in hell I could have been doing any of the races that I do now. No shot in hell I could have done it where I was at in my life at 360 pounds. And that's something that I found that I absolutely love. And so many things that I didn't realize that I would enjoy because my weight and my health had held me back for so long. So yeah, there are health consequences when your weight does reach a certain level. I understand that not every fat person is going to be where I was, absolutely. But I do know personally, my actions again had consequences. By not taking care of myself, by not managing my weight better, by allowing food to be my coping method for any emotion I was dealing with, I was not taking care of myself. And that was the biggest thing that I had to learn to do, was to take care of myself. And then once I was able to do that, I was able to make these lifestyle changes that have resulted in weight loss, that have resulted in me getting in much better shape to where now I can do all of these things with my kids and hopefully be around a lot longer for my kids. So I'm not going to say that anybody ever deserves what's coming to them when it comes to health or outcomes like that. I'll never say that. But I definitely know, at least from my own experiences, that there were a lot of actions that I did that did have health consequences. So if we're just going to ignore these things and pretend like they don't exist, I feel like this whole thing is disingenuous from the start. Because there are health implications that do come with being morbidly obese. It's in the name. It tells you it's morbid. It's literally telling you that it is close to death. And I know what I felt like at 360 pounds when I was 25 years old. And now at 180 pounds at 41, there's absolutely no comparison. When I was having that conversation this morning with my daughter, we were both sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor, petting all three kitties while we were having this conversation. And just that act alone is something I wouldn't have been able to do, let alone any other thing I have wanted to do in my life in which my weight held me back, whether that was riding roller coasters, going ziplining, doing these 5Ks, and so many other things that I do enjoy now that I was unable to do because my body would not allow me to when I was 360 pounds.
In this, then, we also see that your health status is a marker of your morality. You are a worse or better person based on how you have managed your health or how you are perceived to have managed your health.
Okay, but it's not about how others perceive me. It's about how I perceive myself and how I treat myself. That's the thing. At 360 pounds, I didn't really think all that highly of myself. I thought highly enough of myself that I thought I deserved better than what I was doing to myself, and that's what allowed me to make changes and be where I am now. But how I was actually treating myself that led me to 360 pounds, it was not good. Not at all. And so it didn't really matter how others perceived me because I knew what I was doing to myself. So whatever anyone wants to think about how they, quote, perceive my health, I couldn't care less because I know the things that I do within my day-to-day life. And I am living a much healthier lifestyle than I ever did when I was 25. So I know, at least personally, how others perceive me is just not the big motivating factor that she's making it out to be. Again, at least personally. And this is just something I've noticed repeatedly with body positivity and fat acceptance. Every time they want to talk about weight, they only ever talk about the social implications of weight. They only ever talk about how other people are looking at them or thinking about them or perceiving them. But there's never a conversation about the consequences to your health that may come along with being obese or morbidly obese or super morbidly obese. There are never those conversations within these spaces. It's only ever about how other people look at you. And that's the thing about it. Once I got out of body positivity and I realized I had to do what was best for myself and not what the movement said, I realized once I started taking care of myself, I cared so little about what other people thought because I knew I was doing what was right for myself. So I just find it a little strange. This fixation that these movements have about social implications, about how other people treat you and perceive you, when in reality, the thing that saved me more than anything was looking in the mirror and seeing how I was treating myself.
Like whether you're sticking to a skincare routine, whether how you eat, how you exercise, or how they assume you eat or exercise based on how your body looks. So
okay, and are we noticing she is talking about sticking to a skincare routine while doing a skincare routine? And isn't it ironic?
what gets freaking weird here is that I think this all speaks to like an underlying fear of mortality and fear of becoming disabled because, of course, in the US, if you become disabled, you are completely shut out of society and you're basically just excluded from being in the world because things are so inaccessible. And then, of course, we have
What did she just say? Did she just say that if you become disabled that you're going to be shut out of society and excluded from the world in the US? What? Excuse me? Okay, so for those of you who don't know, my grandpa on my mom's side, he was born blind. And by the time I came along, he had pretty much no vision left. While my grandpa, when he was a child, he went to go live with his two aunts during the school year, so that way he could attend a school for the blind. He attended regular high school, went to college. He did get married and obviously have children. He built 2 homes with his bare hands that still stand to this day in my city. Actually, one of them just came up for sale a few years ago. And I mean, I gotta be honest, had I been in a position to purchase it, I would have loved to have bought something that my grandpa built with his own hands. Like, just so cool. He also worked for over 20 years in my city in the Parks and Rec department. He helped build the zoo that I still take my children to all the time. He helped build parks that are still all over the city that families take their kids to still to this day. He did a lot with his life. And then even after he retired, my grandpa still kept going for a long time. He was very active with our city's blind center and workshop. And for a long time, he volunteered his time up there teaching carpentry to other blind and visually impaired people so they could have a trade to fall back on, or at the very least, learn to do like handyman things around their house so they didn't have to hire somebody. And especially in the days back before the internet and you just opened up Yellow Pages and called somebody, you didn't really ever know who you were inviting into your home. And if you were disabled and having to call someone for help, that left you incredibly vulnerable to being robbed or worse. I mean, passing along skills to other blind and visually impaired people so they can live independently, that's invaluable. So I gotta say, I mean, still to this day, my grandpa is still one of the coolest dudes that I have ever met in my life. And I'm so incredibly fortunate that I was very close to him. So hearing people say stuff like that, I mean, that just rubs me the wrong way in the worst way possible. Because I know people like my grandpa. I know that there are disability rights activists who have fought for generations to show that people with disabilities provide an immense value to society. So hearing her say that people with disabilities are going to be shut out of society and excluded from the world due to the lack of accessibility, that just, oh gosh, it rubs me the wrong way in so many ways. And I gotta say, as somebody who does have a disability, I have a dynamic disability myself. It's a connective tissue disorder called hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And the dynamic portion of that just means that my condition is fluid. It changes all the time. So I might have a lot of good days in a row where it looks like I am able-bodied and I don't really have anything wrong with me. But then I could have a flare-up to where I might not even be able to get up off the couch. And just trying to get up to go to the bathroom might be an ordeal. And plenty of days where I need mobility aids like crutches or canes or walkers or even wheelchairs. So many days I have needed those, especially when my ankle was all messed up and I couldn't walk right for over 10 years. So when I hear her say something that disempowering to an entire group of diverse individuals, all with different disabilities, that just rubs me the wrong way in ways I cannot even begin to describe. And I gotta say, knowing that I do have a disability, if I had to pick any time in history in which to live, it would be now. Because we have more accessibility now than at any other point in human history. And that's not to say it's perfect. That's not to say that we don't need to improve upon it or could do better. Of course, there's always things we can improve upon. But I also see how much things have improved just in my lifetime. How much more accessibility there is, for example, for blind and visually impaired people. Things that my grandpa could have only dreamed of. So to hear her say that you're going to be excluded from the world, knowing how tirelessly so many people have worked to try to make it better for the next generation, yeah, I just don't agree with that at all.
And then, of course, we have our healthcare system to contend with, so you're going to be punished by that too. And so people, I think, see the plight of disabled people and they understand how difficult it is, and they need to believe that those people did something to deserve that.
Wow, I gotta say, nobody has ever responded to me in that way. Not once. I've told a number of people about my conditions over the years, and especially when I was going through the diagnostic process, which I gotta say, it took years. It was very frustrating. It's difficult being your own advocate for so long. But the response that I got from people, I never got that. I never once felt anybody tell me that I deserved this. Never, not once. I never saw anybody respond that way to my grandpa. My husband does home health care, and his client's been in a wheelchair since the early 90s. She had a stroke and she's paralyzed on her left side. And I've never seen anybody respond to her in that way, that she must have done something to deserve this. Not even the least little bit. Most of the responses that I've ever seen and personally received have been of kindness and of caring and concern and what can I do to try to help you? Not what did you do to deserve this? So I'm not going to say that people wouldn't respond that way and that somebody out there hasn't said, well, you must deserve this because you did this. But at least from everything that I have experienced, if those people exist, they are going to be in a very small minority. Or at the very least, if everybody in my life did respond that way, well, you must have brought this on yourself. You must deserve this. I gotta say, it would really make me question the company that I'm keeping.
That's neoliberalism. It's the idea that like you and your choices are supreme, they determine your success. This world is a meritocracy, and if you failed to manage yourself adequately, then you deserve whatever happens to you as a result. Basically,
neoliberalism? Now we're on to Reaganomics? What? Okay, so let's go ahead and look this up. Let's go ahead and look on Wikipedia. What is neoliberalism? Neoliberalism is both a political philosophy and a term used to signify the late 20th century political reappearance of 19th century ideas associated with free market capitalism, also known as Reaganomics. That's what that is. And then there is another usage of neoliberalism that it does list. However, it is primarily employed to delineate the societal transformation resulting from market-based reforms. That basically means that what you see on the store shelves is often going to reflect what society is accepting of. So, prime example, every June now you can find so many products that are rainbow themed in nature, right? And why is that? Because companies have now realized that gay rights and gay marriage is incredibly popular in America. So there's money to be made for these companies by them showing in some fashion that they care about it. And whether or not they actually care about it behind the scenes doesn't really matter. They just want to give the appearance of caring about it so that they can make money. That's all it means. So I'm not really sure why she is trying to connect all of this together. And I can't help but notice that even when we haven't had neoliberal economic ideas or neoliberal social ideas, because these are just eras throughout our history, personal responsibility has always been a part of society in one form or another. It's the notion that you have to take care of yourself before you can help take care of others. That's why they always tell you when the masks come down in an airplane that you have to put yours on first before you help others, because you have your own personal responsibility. And then once you take care of yourself, it leaves you much more able to then try to help others. So this notion that personal responsibility only belongs to one political ideology or one economic strategy or one societal ideal is just not accurate if you look at history. Personal responsibility has always been a part of our society. And this is the other thing that I've just never been able to understand. Because on the flip side, if it's not personal responsibility, then they'll tell you all the ways that the system is systemically flawed. But here's my thinking. If I am on a ship that is sinking, aka systemic failures in the system, I'm not going to just sit there and yell about it. I'm not just going to sit there and scream about it and go, well, there's nothing I can do. The ship is going down. I'm going to get myself and my family to a lifeboat. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go down with the ship just because I'm on the ship. I can save myself. I do have the personal responsibility to look after myself, even if the system is messed up. And I'd go as far as to say that I have the responsibility to look after myself because the system sure as hell isn't going to. Because if we're admitting that there are systemic issues, then that's admitting that there are massive flaws across multiple areas of the system, right? So what are you going to do? Just sit around, wait for this flawed system to somehow fix itself and then magically come save you? Or are you going to try to save yourself and get in that lifeboat? I mean, personally, I'm going to try to get in the lifeboat. I'm not going down with a sinking ship. Even if the ship is sinking, we can say that, hey, the ship is sinking, but then also save ourselves. It doesn't have to be, well, there's systemic issues, so therefore I have zero personal responsibility. I'm going to go so far as to say that because there are systemic issues, I now have more personal responsibility because that system is definitely not looking out for me.
Basically, it's just the ideology of like personal responsibility. And so then what people have to tell themselves essentially is just that the world is fair. And what I do, if I do enough things correctly, I can prevent myself from experiencing the worst parts of it. I can prevent myself from experiencing the stigma that occurs if you gain weight.
And again, only focusing on the stigma if you gain weight, not addressing the health consequences that can come along with it. And that's the thing. I gotta say, I mean, I just turned 41 over the weekend, and thank you for everyone for all the birthday wishes. I very much appreciate it. But maybe this is just something that happens as you get a bit older and you get a little bit of perspective and you can look back at your life a little bit more. And that is all of the times that I did screw up. All of the consequences of my actions. And I'm not going to say I have regrets by any stretch, but what I can tell you is those became learning opportunities for me. Not this notion that I'm going to somehow become perfect or anything like that, but hey, I realized that what I did this time led me to this. And that wasn't very good. So for example, all the habits that led me to being 360 pounds. I know if I return to them, that I'm going to have those same results. So if I don't want those same results, I had to come up with new lifestyle habits. And by doing so, I was able to then change my life. So I don't know, maybe it's just me, but only looking at social stigma seems very short-sighted in my mind.
I can prevent myself from experiencing disability. I can prevent myself from experiencing skin cancer. I can prevent myself from becoming less attractive as I age if I do this skincare routine correctly.
Okay, but that's the thing. Proper skincare would have prevented my melanoma. So that just seems so off base to me. So as the person who has had melanoma removed from her body, I'm going to go ahead and listen to my doctors and my dermatologists specifically and wear my sunscreen.
Basically, they're all individual fixes to systemic problems that befall anybody who falls outside like the normative category that is, respected and lauded and praised. And this is called
and again, it's not about how society treats you. It's about the health consequences that come along with some of these things. Melanoma. That's not a systemic issue. That was the result, the direct consequences from me taking inaction, from me not wearing my sunscreen, from me not wearing wide hats that would protect me from the sun, from staying out in the sun directly at the worst parts of the day without a stitch of protection on my skin. Yeah, that's not a systemic failure. That was my own failure. And again, it's not that I deserved to get melanoma, but it's the consequences of my actions. And the same thing was true with my weight. It's not that I deserve to be treated like crap by society because of my weight. It's that I was facing very real health consequences directly caused by my actions. So she keeps talking about systemic failures, but there are consequences to your actions.
Just world fallacy or the just world hypothesis. It's the idea that basically the world is fair and what you do in your personal actions will come back to you in how good your life ends up being. And people really need to believe this because it's extremely comforting to think that you are in control of life, which is by definition extremely random and very out of control because we all die one day. And
okay, wow. Wow. I gotta say, I need no further reminders in my life that we all die one day. I mean, my dad died at 19, very suddenly. Went to work, never came home. My cousin died at the age of 39. Went to sleep and never woke up. And unfortunately, in both cases, I can tell you that their weight definitely played a part in this. There's no doubt in my mind. My dad, he was 52, but he also had a heart condition. And he was well over 400 pounds, was not doing what he needed to take care of his health. He lived a very sedentary life, and he had a very stressful, demanding job. He went back to smoking after having quit for a few years, but he had smoked most of his life. He drank fairly routinely most of his life. And all of those things combined, along with that heart condition, there's no doubt in my mind, helped contribute to him dying so young. And I'm definitely not going to blame him. I'm not going to say he deserved it. I mean, just objectively looking at it, because, I mean, let's be fair, the heredity that none of us can change, half my heredity comes from him. So I'd like to know a little bit more about what I might be facing down the line and if there are other ways that it could be managed. And I mean, reading about my dad's heart condition, he really didn't do anything at all to take care of it. The only thing that he did was take the medicine prescribed by his doctors. But again, he missed doctor's appointments. He ignored their advice. He didn't get blood work done when needed to. And And I mean, it's not lost on me that he could have done all of those things perfectly and this still have happened, because I understand just how fragile life truly is. I got a big dose of reality a lot sooner than I was ever expecting in life. And then like I mentioned, my cousin, he was 39 and he had obstructive sleep apnea. And that was caused directly by his weight. And then it was exacerbated by the fact he refused to wear a CPAP machine. So I'm definitely not going to blame him. I'm not going to say he deserved it. But all I'm going to say is I miss him terribly, as I do my dad. And if there's anything that I could do to save my children from going through what I went through at such a young age, you're damn skippy I'm going to do that. Absolutely, I'm going to do that. When I was talking with my daughter this morning, one of the things that I told her is, I'm so glad that I learned a much better way of taking care of myself before my kids came into my life. Because now I can do all of those things with them and perhaps be here for longer for them, see my grandkids. Those were all things that I would absolutely love to do, and things that I have watched my very own family miss out on. So yes, I am very well aware that no one's going to make it out of this life alive, and that yes, nature always wins. I mean, if nature's always going to win, I certainly don't need to help nature out. It's already going to win. So yes, I am not under the impression that somehow I'm going to outsmart nature in this regard and somehow do the thing that none of us can. But I also know that I don't want to willingly, purposefully, intentionally, through my actions or my inactions, do things that could cause me to miss out on my kids, on potential grandkids, on any of this life. Because I enjoy my life and I'd like more of it, please.
It ends, and we know this. So it's literally an existential crisis that people have, and then they sort of decide to micromanage whatever they can about their bodies, which of course, in the case of skincare, comes with a social reward.
So there we have it. That's evidently how skincare, weight management, and neoliberalism all tied together. I'm still genuinely confused how all of these things are tied together. And in many cases with these arguments that I hear from body positivity and fat acceptance, it's almost like they're making a word salad of buzzwords. Let me just go ahead and throw in the just world fallacy and neoliberalism and this and that, and none of it's going to make any lick of sense. Because at the end of the day, we all have personal responsibility in our own lives. We all have to put on that mask first before we can then help others. And in the case of systemic issues, you have even more personal responsibility, because in the case of systemic issues, the system definitely isn't looking out for you. So who else is going to be looking out for you? It's got to be yourself. But maybe that's just me. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think? I'm genuinely curious and I love reading all of your responses. That is where we'll leave things today. I thank you so much for joining me. Please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye! Pokey, what do you think? Who are you picking for the World Series? It's got to be Guardians, right? I mean, they did clinch on my birthday, right? Oh, sweetie pie. Can we see your beautiful eyes? Hello, beautiful. Oh. Bye!